Welcome to today's lesson on preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species. I'm Sue Davies-McGill and I work with the Columbia Shuswap Invasive Species Society. Today I'll be talking about what invasive species are, why we should care about them, some invasives to be on the lookout for, what you can do to help, and then at the end there'll be a fun crossword assignment. And be aware that the answers to the crossword are all contained in the presentation that follows, so keep your eyes peeled. So what is an invasive species anyway? Well, invasive species are not from here. That is, they're not from BC. They typically take over new areas. That's why we call them invasive. They invade. And they typically create some sort of negative impact. They can be plants, fish, shellfish, even diseases can be invasive. And what is it that makes them so invasive? Well, typically they can have very high reproductive capabilities. The zebra mussel can produce up to 1 million eggs per year each. Imagine having 1 million brothers and sisters. They can spread easily and effectively. The seeds of the yellow flag iris can float for more than a year until they find a new beach to grow on and start infesting a new place. They typically can establish quickly and thrive in new areas. This is a small fragment of floating Eurasian water milfoil, which can create roots while it's on its way across the lake and can easily establish new colonies in new areas. So why should we care about these invasive species anyway? Well, invasive water milfoil weed can be dangerous to swimmers, and it can even tangle around the propellers of boats. Knotweeds can clog salmon spawning channels, and yellow flag iris that we mentioned before can damage waterfowl habitat. Invasive fish can be extremely voracious predators and eat up native fish like salmon. This is a predatory snakehead fish. Invasive mussels can filter out all the live food particles from the water, cutting out the food chain and starving native fish like salmon and trout. Here they are in water that's too clear. They don't have any food left. And sometimes invasive mussels can create conditions that favour toxic algal blooms that kill fish and can seriously damage humans and even dogs. The razor-sharp shells of native invasive mussels can litter beaches. Say goodbye to walking barefoot on the beach if these mussels get into our lakes in BC. So what are some of these invasive species to watch out for? We've just spoken about zebra mussels. They are striped, but no, they're not the zebras that you find in Africa. They're very small shellfish, about the size of a dime, and they love to cling to hard surfaces. We don't have these in British Columbia, and we're making sure we don't get them here. If you see a mussel or shellfish clinging to a boat or a dock in a freshwater lake or river in BC, please report this. We need to know straight away. You can report sightings to the RAP line at 1877 952 7277. Another invasive species to watch out for is the American bullfrog. It's really important never to let any invasive species loose into our environment, and here's why. If we had a pond in BC, typically it would have some ducks, it would have some frogs with tadpoles, maybe some more ducks with ducklings, more frogs, some snakes, maybe some more frogs and tadpoles. All our native frogs are really quite small. But if we were to release one bullfrog into this pond, the bullfrogs are much bigger. And the first thing that would happen was that bullfrog would eat some of our native frogs. That bullfrog would then have babies and create more bullfrogs who would start eating other things. Maybe some of our snakes would disappear. Some more of our frogs would disappear. And even some of our ducklings would disappear, leaving a pond with pretty much just invasive bullfrogs and nothing much else. Invasive bullfrogs even eat each other. Remember, don't let it loose. Never let pets or non-native species go in our environment. This is what invasive bullfrogs sound like. Invasive species can even be diseases. Whirling disease is a disease that affects salmon, trout, and whitefish, all the good game fishing species. It deforms the fish's spine and makes them swim in circles, hence the name whirling disease. Unfortunately, it's fatal to most of the fish that it infects, and it can be transmitted by moving fish parts or even mud from one water body to another. Yellow flag iris that I mentioned before is an invasive species that likes to line the edges of ponds and lakes. It's pretty, but it's very damaging to the environment. Remember, poor old Daffy Duck can't reach the lake if this plant is in the way. Invasive giant hogweed is a plant that's twice as tall as an adult human being, but it's very dangerous to touch. This is not something you want to play with. This plant, the sap of this plant can burn you. And you can see in these images here that there's some very nasty burns indeed from the sap of this plant. Do not touch this plant. So, how can you help? Well, it's important to prevent the spread of invasive species as aquatic hitchhikers. Many aquatic invasive species rides on boats. You can see them here on the back of this trailered boat, the plants hanging off there, but they can also hitch rides on canoes and paddle boards. If you're traveling with your boat, stop at watercraft inspection stations. Watercraft inspection keeps invasive mussels out of BC. And when you're moving your boat from one lake to another, clean off the plants, mud, and clinging animals from your boat, trailer, and gear. Drain the bilge, the bait wells, ballast tanks, and any standing water onto dry land, and make sure everything is crispy dry before relaunching into a new lake or river. And remember to pull out that drain plug when leaving a lake so that your boat fully drains, and then remember to put it back in before relaunching your boat. Never release live fish or live bait into the water. It's illegal to release live fish in BC. And remember that pet goldfish? Goldfish can go from pet to pest. Never release pets into the wild. Don't let it loose. Always clean your boots, waders, boats, and fishing gear. And always dispose of fish and fish parts into the garbage, never down the carburetor. Find out more about invasives with our free app. Search Report Invasives BC on the App Store. If you want to report seeing an invasive, go to the App Store, search Report Invasives BC, or go online to reportinvasives.ca. Or you can report directly to your local invasive species society on our toll-free number, at our email, or on our website. Remember, learn to identify invasive species, tell your friends what you know, clean your boat, even if it's a canoe, and never release invasive species into the environment. So we're on to our assignment at the end. This is a crossword puzzle, and all of the answers are in the presentation just seen. You can print and fill this crossword puzzle and give the completed puzzle to your teacher. Then you're all done. Thanks for watching, and happy invasive-free playing on the water.